And a warm welcome to this Audit and Scrutiny Committee. Jan Archie, I think could I ask you to sum into your is it coming out of yours? I'm getting an echo out of yours. It's gone now, I think. Thanks. Okay, please note there's no Gaelic translation for this morning's meeting. The meeting has been conducted from the chamber and remotely through Microsoft Teams. Could you please ensure your microphones are off? And before we begin, I'm going to ask Councillor Colin McLean to lead us in prayer. And the meeting has now been recorded.
O Lord our God, we thank you this morning for your goodness to us and sparing us and providing for us. We think of those less fortunate than ourselves this morning, waking up to tragedy and death in the countries of Syria and Turkey and the Ukraine. We ask you, O Lord, to be with these people who are affected, and we'd ask that you would intervene in these places and help those that are helping the disaster in these places. And we ask, O Lord, that you would help us to acknowledge your goodness to us as an island and as a nation, that we are here today and we enjoy what we enjoy because of your goodness to us. And we ask as we deliberate over the meeting this morning that you would be with us and help us in all that we do. Be with the chair here and be with the staff, the chief executive and all that work in the building here and go about their duties, that we thank you for them, for their diligence and all that they do. We ask that you would bless them. Bless us as a community as well. We commit all our cares to you. We think of those who are laid aside at present through illness, of body or of mind. We think of those who are struggling at these times, and we ask that you would be with them as well. Be with us all, O Lord our God, and help us to look to you as the God who is our Creator, the God to whom we will have to give account at the end of our days, and help us to do things wisely and correctly. Keep our feet from falling and pardon all our sins. For Jesus' sake, amen.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. Now, you're all fully versed with the conduct of the microphone, so I won't go over the preamble again. In regards to declarations of interest, members must leave the chamber or end the call remotely. Now, a reminder again that the meeting has been recorded and is going to be made available on the CONLA's website following the meeting. Items 13, 14 and 15 will be taken in private at the end of the meeting, and prior to moving into private, participants other than the relevant officers and members of the committee will be asked to leave the meeting. Now, with the committee's permission, I intend to take item number 15 of the 3 private items first. And the reason behind that is that we have officers present who will speak to this report, who would obviously have to leave the chamber for the other 2 items. So rather than take them back in again after the first 2 items, we'll take them in as the first item. So item 15 of the 3 private items will be the first one that we will consider when we go into private. Now, finally, I would just like to welcome Martin Devaney and Asif to the meeting from the new audit team in Audit Scotland. Welcome to the meeting. And as a committee, we welcome you and we look forward to working with you in the coming months and years. For the committee's assurance, the team at Audit Scotland has changed for the coming term of 5 years. We have the new team with us and we are engaged with them. I've already had a Teams meeting with Asif and promising start to the beginning, and they're both in today, and a warm welcome to both of you. So we hope to see you in the chamber at some date in the near future. Welcome, gentlemen. Okay, so moving on to our agenda. The first item is the minute of the meeting of the 1st December 2022. That's for approval. Great, thank you. Item number 2 on your agenda is a declaration of interest. And again, I'll just reiterate that members are asked to declare any interest they have in the items on the agenda. It will be helpful if members expressed why they are declaring an interest in the item concerned. Members in the chamber, please do so now by pressing your microphone on or remotely through Teams by using the raise hand function. And please ensure that the declaration is repeated prior to the relevant item and you adhere to the protocol as previously indicated or as you're familiar with. Now, I've not seen any raised hands remotely, and I've not seen any declarations of interest within the chamber. So with that, we move on to our service improvement section on the agenda, item number 3. This is a report by the Chief Executive, and the purpose of the report is to seek approval for a refreshed approach to performance management reporting. Feedback from the Best Value Assurance report in September 2022 noted concerns that there is considered to be too much detail in the current method of performance management reporting for public and members, and advised that the information needs to be less operational and more strategic. The proposed new method of reporting and the encouragement away from operational reporting provides the opportunity to refocus how performance is reported to the Cónle. Now, I'd like to spend a bit of time on this item because I think it's quite important. So I'm going to ask the Chief Executive to speak to the report first, and then I'll invite Norma Skinner, Head of HR and Performance, to also comment and answer any questions. Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. This is an important report, and as you've noted, it picks up. This is perhaps one of the first reports picking up the commentary in the Best Value Assurance report of last September, and that said that the information provided in performance reports was perhaps overly complex and a bit of duplicate reporting through the committees. In defence of that system, and for the benefit of members who weren't here in 2014, the 2014 Best Value Audit report, I think, indicated that a bit more detail was what was wanted. So, as always, if you give too much, there's a risk of over-reporting. If you give too little, of course, it doesn't recognise that the interest of many members in the chamber is around what's happening on the ground, is around the operational delivery of the service. So there is a balance. We will not always get that right. But of course, what is important is that the strategies, the political strategies, the policies which you have approved are being demonstrated to be implemented, to be delivering the outcomes that they were set up to achieve, and that you have sufficient information to measure that performance. So we have done a lot of work, and much of that is in tandem with Audit Scotland, and it's been well recognised by Audit Scotland to embed the culture of improvement through the performance reporting, through the website, through the self-assessments, through the various customer satisfaction surveys, and through the community engagement strategy. These are important elements, but the BVAR noted there's just too much detail for the public and members, and the information needs to be less operational and more strategic. So that's the finding. So moving to paragraph 6, we've discussed this at length in CMT and with Audit Scotland, and the proposals are set out there at 6.4. You'll see at 6.3 that does move away from operational reporting, but it's given us all an opportunity to refocus how we report performance. So it's set out there at 6.4. I won't read these out to you, but that's what's proposed. Regarding self-assessments, very valuable process that those have come to this committee, as you know, Chair. We've used the Public Sector Improvement Framework, PSIF, and the Best Value Toolkits for a number of years, and we've done 3 or 4 a year, dependent on other work. And again, Audit Scotland feel these are focused on operational improvement. They should be more strategic. So we're suggesting there we undertake 1 or 2 strategic assessments each year and report back to you on that basis, and heads of service undertake the assessments for operational improvements. And that makes logical sense. The employee forum we will re-establish, but the focus will move less from HR to performance. But there is a lot to take to the employee forum in the next year, and not all of that will be good news, of course, because of the budgetary position in which we find ourselves. You heard my remarks yesterday at Policy and Resources Committee. So the work of the employee forum that will tie in with these reviews and the review that the strategic finance consultant will be leading in conjunction with heads of service. Management training we promised last year, and that's just for noting really. That's all of these elements will be taken forward, and Audit Scotland is happy with that, just saying that more leadership training would be beneficial. So it will include that as well, particularly for middle management. So we've had the current system of performance management for a number of years. I have to say that's generally been well received by the Chamber. I have never had any members saying to me there's too much, there's too little, it's the wrong kind of stuff, or we're not receiving information we need, or it's the wrong level. But we have to take account of the comments that have been given to us. So we will I suggest we try out what's proposed in this report for at least a year, because you need to measure it over a year, and then if there's any adjustments after that, we make them accordingly. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you, Chief Executive. And these comments are very welcome, and we do welcome the service improvement model. Ms. Skinner, do you want to come in now and talk us through each part of it?
Trying to add to what the Chief Executive has said, but really just to highlight that we're not losing information. What we are doing, the operational information will still be available in the quarterly business plan update reports. Complaint information still available in the quarterly complaint information reports, and all of these are on the website. One of the things that Audit Scotland were saying was we're duplicating a lot of the information that you all have access to that we're reporting through our website. We're then reporting to you again in here. So what they were saying was, rather than doing that we'd be better directing you to where the information is on our website for things like the quarterly business plan updates from all the services and the complaint information, etc., and that we actually lift up the information that we're giving you in terms of strategic reporting. So the aim is to do that twice yearly. I think everything else, I'm happy to take questions on, but I don't have anything specific.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Skinner.
To add.
Members, Councillor Ray McKenzie first, and then Councillor Gordon Murray. Ray.
Thank you. I know that the answer to this actually is probably not available for another year, but can we have any indication of how much work will be saved with this? I mean, the external auditors have any, they've obviously compared this with other councils or whatever, but I mean, we know what's happening at the present time. Is this going to save work? Or, what is the answer to that?
Yeah, I'll ask Ms. Skinner to come in.
Or shall I come back next year?
You'll probably come back next year as well and more questions.
Yeah, the business plan updates will still be done, so there is still that work there to do. I suppose what it does is it's not necessarily less work. There's maybe a wee bit less, but it is about making sure that the information coming to committee for you guys to scrutinise is the information that you need, I suppose. Other than that, I don't think there's particularly less work. I don't know, maybe the Chief Executive.
The Chief Executive, somebody else would like to offer. Yeah.
I fear not, Chair, because the information, it will still be on the website, it will still be on Interplan, so it will still be put there. It'll just be reported here in a different way. So perhaps a minor change in how we prepare committee reports, but the information has to be gathered and analysed regardless. But as you say, Councillor McKenzie, we'll see in a year's time if these recommendations are approved.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Councillor Gordon Murray.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair. Just like to welcome 6.1 with regards to the corporate strategy, and hope that seminar takes place sooner than later, because we're almost a year into the council and we've no real strategy that represents the new political vision of the Corla. I was going to mention training as well. We're still waiting for audit training, which I think, as you would probably agree, Chair, is very important in how we fulfil our role in the audit committee. Can I have an update on whether we're going to get audit training? And I had a third point as well. I wanted to ask, what was the rationale behind moving the employee forum to a performance scenario rather than a HR? What's the rationale behind that?
On the first point, I do agree with you. We do need training would be beneficial to all members of the audit committee and possibly to all members of council actually, so they're familiar with the procedure. I think I don't think
Is it a statutory requirement?
Yeah, I think we'll come back to you with a date for that fairly soon. I think we have to do it with. I'll ask the chief executive, and I'll ask the chief executive to answer your second point as well. And
Chair, I'm not sure there's any. I'm not aware of any outstanding training, but we'll obviously check that point and come back to you. But as far as I know, the training took place through the induction process last year. If there's additional training to be required, we'll look into that.
and we can obviously liaise. I saw Mr. Gomez, Chief Internal Auditor, nodding there as well. So yeah, we'll come back on that.
I think on the employee forum point, I mean, it will always be an HR and employee a forum to deal with HR and employee issues. But it was established during the pandemic, so it focused more on operational HR issues. All employees, though, have their role in delivering the corporate strategy, their own service plans, and the other policies of the Corla, and it's important that that's always emphasised. That's not for the chamber. It's not for the CMT. It's not for any particular group of employees. It's for everyone. So that's the message there, that it will become, there will be a focus on corporate performance as well as just employee and HR issues. Although I fear that the latter will become pretty dominant given the budget issues facing us.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Councillor Murray, are you happy with that? Okay. Any other questions from Councillor McLean and then Councillor Johnny McKeever? Councillor McLean.
Thanks, Chair. It almost strikes me as being that operational and strategic have such a crossover that there is almost, you could almost call them operational strategic, to try to split both of them into two different components. I find difficulty. I found difficulty that particularly, I think Mr. Burr and I mentioned that through the IGIB, but I still think that I think that, to be quite honest, your 6-4 makes sense. I do think that the breakup of it. My question would be is, first of all, do you see then a slimmed down element HR department? I think it's slimmed down anyway, to be quite honest with you, and that more of the HR kind of work is done within the departments, because I feel that would give more autonomy, more to the departments. If the HR, which I don't know if this is leading to that, maybe it should, that there should be more accountability and autonomy within the departments, so that the departments then report as they do. So therefore, you're almost then putting the departments to feedback to councillors whenever it needs to be, but that there's accountability there within the maybe I should be saying there should be more accountability within the departments to do their own to assess their own operational and to then do the strategic. So really, should you have then an HR element within the structure of the core, to the extent that there is maybe I'm just looking at it from a practical side of it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McLean. Ask the Chief Executive maybe to answer that point on the HRs.
I'll answer it, Chair, and then I'll with your permission hand over to Ms. Skinner. There's always a huge crossover between audit, HR, performance. That's in the jargon. That's organisational support, organisational strategy. But the information, of course, always comes from the services, from the departments. I wouldn't be in favour of each reporting in their own way, because then it's very, very difficult for you and indeed me to measure and compare. And it has to be, of course, within the framework of the current corporate strategy and all the other policies, corporate policies we have. So the format would always be the same, but the information comes from services. And yes, we are looking at all times, and we will look through the employee forum at ways of streamlining how we support, because the resource just isn't there to support anything more elaborate, even if that was desirable. But Ms. Skinner will probably explain that much better than I.
Right. Skinner.
No, I don't have a huge amount to add to that. I think that's right. We want to make sure that there's a central understanding of performance, that we're doing it effectively, we're measuring it in the same way. We always have to be able to benchmark, so we kind of look at that side, but it's definitely not taking away and it is encouraging, I suppose, the departments to look at how are they measuring their own services and measuring it effectively. So we're driving that kind of improvement with the services by tying it in with the corporate strategy more as well, so that they're really looking at their performance in terms of how does all of this feed into the vision of the corporate strategy and the vision of yourselves in terms of what you're trying to achieve, and doing it in a way that we can better benchmark, that we can better look at how our services compare locally, how they compare against like family group councils. They call it family groups for councils that have maybe similar rurality or similar population sizes, etc., and also how we compare nationally. So we're working with the likes of the Improvement Service in terms of these things.
Thank you, Ms. Skinner. Clayton here. Does that to you? Yeah, thank you. Councillor McKeever.
Thank you, Chair. While I agree with the Chief Executive that the training did take part in the induction, we are hit with so much during the induction, it's practically impossible to take everything on board. And I think that further training would be beneficial to especially new members, because it's impossible to take it all on board. As regards the recommendation, I'm happy to go with this for a year, as long as we can look at again after a year's time. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It will come back. This keeps coming back to us anyway, and we have a chance to review again. So, and we see as progress is going on, we've just got to give the benefit that the officer are preparing, and is to the best value as well. So we are complying with that. I'll ask the Chief Executive on the training side. I think it is important that we do get, like you say, some kind of refresher training or induction training refreshed for the new members as well. So, Chief Executive.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Chair. Councillor McKeever's right. There is a huge volume of information, sometimes a blizzard at the induction, particularly for new members, and we do refresher training, particularly on the standing orders, the processes, the procedures, because no new member can understand fully how these operate. You know what they are, but how they operate until you've been through a few meetings. Financial training, I think we've had specifically, but we will put round an email once we're through the budgets and once we've started the review of the corporate strategy, and see what people would best like refresher training on. That's something we can organise through the I say through the summer glibly, but through that period, after, which is a year after the election. So thanks for that.
Thank you for that. It may be worth as well on the training if our colleagues at Audit Scotland will be present on a day, either pre-committee, so just to give the committee and new members a feel for the role of Audit Scotland, because I feel we meet as an audit committee, but there's a very important role a layer above that, which is Audit Scotland. And I think I'm seeing Asif, would you like to come in, Asif? I see you're knowledgeable local government in our previous discussion, so would you welcome that to come up one of the times you're up? We could arrange this kind of training session and get the role of Audit Scotland explained to members as well.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Very happy to do that in due course. We have done that in the past with other councils I've been involved in, so I think Martin and I would be happy to come over at an agreed time, come on site and kind of explain to members what our role is and take any questions. Yes, happy to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And I think the committee would welcome that as well. So thank you. Yeah, okay. Councillor Gordon Murray, you want to come back in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I welcome the discussion. I was under the impression that the audit training was more specialised than just an induction at the start, such as the planning training. But I welcome the fact that we're going to move it on and have a seminar. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Because, you know, we do value the role of this committee, and this is an important, in my view, it's a very important committee. A lot of important stuff goes through the reports of this committee as well. So yeah, I think we'd all welcome that. So we'll move on. So with that, do members agree to note this report, the recommendation at paragraph 3.1? Yeah, agreed. Sorry, to approve it. Yeah, yeah, approve the report. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Okay, now we move on to the item of scrutiny, number 4. This report's concerns at work is the annual report 2022. It's a report by the monitoring officer, Mr. Tim Langley. This report is for noting and provides the committee with an update of any whistleblowing complaints received in the past year. And I'll ask Mr. Langley, who's present, the monitoring officer, to speak to the report and answer any questions. Mr. Langley.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing to add to the report. As you see, it's a clear report. There's been no instances recorded brought to my attention last year, which of course is good news. Happy to take any questions though.
Do members have any questions from Mr. Langley? Councillor Ray McKenzie.
The fact that we have received no complaints or no whistleblowing during the year doesn't mean to say that people might have wanted to, in the sense that is there anonymity? Somebody wants to bring something forward, you know, are there any consequences for them at the end of the day? You know, can they bring this thing forward if they have particular problems anonymously?
I personally would hope there wouldn't be any consequence, but I'll ask Mr. Langley to answer that question. Mr. Langley.
No, you're correct, Chair. The whole statutory basis for that is based around protecting the individual who is blowing the whistle, to ensure that they don't suffer any consequences as a result of having raised genuine concerns. And I hope that is made clear in the policy that we have, and I certainly attempted to make that point when the refreshment policy went round staff members. So yes, that's certainly the statutory basis. There will be no detriment suffered by anyone who blows the whistle.
Thank you, Mr. Langley. Mr. McKenzie, you want to come back in?
Yeah, I appreciate, obviously that's the intention, but in the sense of covering the employee who has a complaint, how do we know, is it anonymous? I did ask that, and you know, how is it actually reported, and how is it, you know, what's the sequence of events afterwards?
It's a process you want clarification on, Councillor McKenzie, is it? Yes.
Well, yes, and obviously as the person, you know, who raises this, I know it's difficult to do it anonymously because, you know, you obviously have to find out a bit of background maybe. I mean, I'm generalizing here because I don't know of any circumstances, but what I'm concerned about is that if somebody has a problem like that, and I know our own staff when to get, take restrictive action against an employee, but I just want to be reassured that the safeguards are there. If somebody is, you know, has a particular problem and they bring it up, that there can be no consequences at the end of the day. I mean, you say that there won't be, but if the thing is anonymous, then obviously there's a greater likelihood that there won't be any repercussions.
Okay. I think possibly maybe the best thing is if Mr. Langley was to speak to Councillor Mackenzie out with this meeting and explain the process to him and give him clarification, because that might be. Are you happy enough with that, Councillor Mackenzie? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so do members agree to note this report then? Thank you. Move on now to internal audit matters, item 5 on your agenda today. This is the progress report by the Chief Internal Auditor. It's for noting and summarising internal audit activity for the period 1st April 2022 to the 16th January 2023. And Mr. Sandy Gomez, our Chief Internal Auditor, will speak to the report and answer any questions. Mr. Gomez.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, so as you said, this is the progress report for internal activity until the 16th of January. With very attention to section 3, which shows that there are currently 3 audits underway, 2 of which relate to audits on which external audit place reliance, these being council tax and non-domestic rates. There are currently no active investigations underway. Section 4 shows the follow-ups which form part of the agenda today. So in conclusion, the progress of the operational plan is on track for the end of the year. We still have 1 vacancy in the section, but the recent closing date for that position has passed and shortlisting is currently underway. And I'm quite positive on hopefully finding an outcome to that soon. The appendix to the report shows a snapshot of where we are with all audits and the operational plan to date. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. And again, it is a busy schedule, and we're encouraged to hear that you are possibly reaching a short-leading process for the vacancy. So that's certainly a step in the right direction. So, members, do you have any? No? Okay. Do members agree to note this report? Indeed, thank you. Move on now to item number 6 on your agenda. Needs assessment and strategic audit plan for 2023 to 26. This again is a report by the Chief Internal Auditor, and it relates to the strategic audit plan for the 3-year period 1st April 2023 to 31st March 2026. The plan is a result of an internal audit needs assessment, which completes with best value principles and links to business planning and risk management processes. The outcome of the risk assessment process is summarised in the appendices to the report. And again, I'll invite Mr. Sandy Gomez, our Chief Internal Auditor, to speak to the report and answer any questions. Mr. Gomez.
Thanks, Chair. As the report states, this is what we need in order to produce our 3-year strategic plan for the years from 23-24 to 25-26. So the detail of the report shows how we undertook the audit needs assessment and the risk assessment basis on which we undertook with discussions with management and heads of service. So following our risk assessment and discussions, we were able to confirm the plan, which is in the appendix to the report. This covers the 3 years, which will form the basis of the operational plans for each of the coming years. So I won't go into too much detail. There's plenty of detail in the report, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. And again, it is a very busy report. So, members, any questions for Mr. Gomez? Councillor Gordon-Murray.
Thank you, Chair. In the plan, WA04, Special Education Compliance with Children, and GERFIC, it's seen as a high risk. What is it? Why is it a high risk? What would you?
Mr. Gomez, yeah.
There's a number of factors which we take into account when conducting the risk assessment. These can be to do with the budget, the volume of transactions, the political sensitivity around this, and there's a detail of this in section 8 of the main body of the report that shows the different aspects that we consider. Through this process, it gives us, as internal audit, an overall score, and that score is based on a national framework that majority of chief internal auditors use, and that's how we base our risk on it, and that's why it's come out as the high risk.
Chair, I was going to say, does this exercise feed into the budget strategy, where a lot of proposals have been put up that might affect this particular sector?
No, it doesn't feed into the budget proposals. This is purely from an internal audit view as to how we risk assess each of the sections within the departments.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not seeing any further questions on the report. So sorry, Councillor McLean.
Chair, yeah, so the light takes a wee bit of time to come on, Chair. Sorry for coming in at the end, but that's a good question from Councillor Murray and well spotted. But I would say to you mentioned in the reasons for carrying out your assessments or internal audit is time since the last reviewed. What time element do you give? Because time isn't entirely. Obviously, we'll be discussing something later on today where I reckon that internal audit should have been quicker than they had been. But what element of time would you say?
Mr. Gomez.
Yeah, so the time element is risk assessed based on the time since the previous audit and also the outcomes of that audit. So if, for example, it had been audited within the last 12 months, but there were a number of high risk elements, that would still reflect negatively on the risk scale. But that can feed to if it had, for example, only been maybe 3 or 4 years since the previous audit, we would look at that previous audit, what the outcomes were, and also just that time alone, given that it had been 3 years, would put it higher up the risk scale.
Yeah, what I'm getting at is that the time element is that, in other words, some places have, some departments or whatever have not been assessed, have not had internal audit in, say, for 5, 6 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are some
know,
sections which we, depending on the risk assessment, if they are assessed as low risk or medium low risk, we simply don't have the resources to audit that section within the resources that we have. So we can only, therefore, consider the high, medium high, and some of the medium risks.
Yeah, yeah, I take that, you know, in comparison to other departments who have been quality assured of whatever we like to call internal audit. It's on a far more regular basis, but I take your point is you haven't got the manpower to do so. Yeah.
And hopefully we will, and hopefully we will have another member of staff in that team, you know, very quickly. So it will be back up to full speeds. Okay, no further questions? No. Members agree to note the strategic audit plan? Thank you. We now move on to a completed review by internal audit. It's a final report as part of the operational audit plan for 2022-23. Item number 7 on your agenda is bus contracts, public school and integrated. Again, a report by the Chief Internal Auditor, which is for noting and provides an overview of the CONUS arrangements for the operation and management of bus contracts, public school and integrated in terms of the objectives detailed in the report. And I'll ask Chrissy Macaulay from the audit team to speak to this report, and David MacLeod is also present and available to answer any questions. First of all, Chrissy Macaulay.
Thank you, Chair. If I can get members to turn to page 5, section 1.8, recommendations. 5 recommendations from this review, just quite straightforward. 3 we've marked as housekeeping, and 2 would like management to look at it further if possible. If you can turn then to the main findings that are in the body of report at section 2, and our action plan on page 12. All the recommendations have been fully accepted and dates of implementation in place. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Macaulay. And I'll ask Mr. MacLeod now to come in and talk us through the recommendations and his action plan to date. Mr. MacLeod.
Thank you, Chair. I think as Mr. Macaulay has just stated, it's we think it's a fairly good report in that picked up some minor housekeeping issues which we have dealt with, and one of the sort of high risks involved with tendering for bus contracts, both public and school, in the Western Isles is availability of local contractors. That makes competitive tendering quite difficult to achieve, but we are doing what we can to encourage operators to at least be active in their own areas, and we do have the opportunity, as we do with Bus Nacorla in Lewis and Harris, to use in-house deployment as a benchmark. Obviously, the further away you are from our depots, the more difficult that is to actually provide a cost-effective alternative, but that is always available to us as an option. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. MacLeod. Do members have any questions for either Ms. Macaulay or Ms. MacLeod? No. Okay, we agree to note this report. Indeed, thank you. We now move into internal audit follow-up reports. We've got 5 in front of us to be considered today. The first one's item 8 on your agenda, payroll and expenses. This is a report by the Chief Internal Auditor and for noting, provides an update on recommendations made following a payroll and expenses report which was issued on 22nd April 2022. This follow-up review was undertaken in accordance with the operational audit internal audit plan for 2021-22. And the follow-up confirmed that 8 out of the 11 recommendations has been fully implemented, and management have confirmed that the remaining recommendation will be completed by mid-2023. And Mr. Sandy Gomez will speak to the report, and I think Norman MacDonald may be present if there are any questions. But first of all, Mr. Gomez.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, as you mentioned, section 1.6 shows that 8 out of the 11 recommendations have now been fully implemented. Section 2 details not only the progress to date, but some of the activity and action that are outstanding. So progress continues on the remaining 3 recommendations, and they should be completed soon as far as we are aware. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. It's good to see the progress on this report and it has moved along. Do members have any questions? Councillor Finnegan, online.
Thanks, Chair. I'll tell you what it is. It's just a very small minor point. On the RAG section, the traffic lights section, and I'm just going to, I had it up a second ago. And it says 1.5, it says the second one down that councillors must be reminded that their expenses have to be, hang on, I've got it, must be done within 2 months. But we're, one of the things I've been told 3 months, and I'm regularly being told 3 months. So I don't know if that's the same with other councillors. So it's just really just to highlight that tiny little point. So just which is it, 2 or 3 months?
Thank you, Councillor Finnegan. My understanding personally was it was 3 months as well, but I'll ask Mr. Gomez to clarify that because we have been told 3 months as members. So
okay, I will look into that and let members know.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, Councillor Finnegan, is that, do you want to come back in or are you?
No, I'm just I'm trying to get the hand down and moving between screens. So no, that's right. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members agree to note this report. Yeah, thank you. Item 9 is libraries. Again, a report by the Chief Internal Auditor and for noting and provides an update on recommendations made following a libraries report which was issued on 13th August 2021. This follow-up review was undertaken in accordance with the operational annual internal audit plan for 2021-22. The follow-up confirmed that 8 out of the 14 recommendations have been fully implemented and management have confirmed that the remaining recommendations are ongoing. And Mr. Gomez again will speak to the report, and I think Neil MacLeod is probably present to answer any questions. Mr. Gomez, first of all.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, this is just to note, as you probably know, this report was, the follow-up report was before you at the last committee series. It's back before you due to there having been a number of red items. So there are now progress on all recommendations, 8 of them now fully complete. The recommendation relating to the previous red, which was about underpaid hours, is the work is in hand and should be put forward at the next Corporate Workforce Panel and HR Subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Do members have any questions? Councillor Finnegan, I see your hands back up again. Is that a legacy hand or?
No, I wanted to come in again. I don't know if you want to bring Neil in first. Maybe Neil will explain things, but whatever Neil's going to say first. I'll let him speak first, eh?
Yeah. Okay, is Neil, are you available?
I am, Chair. Thank
Yeah.
you. Nothing to add to what Sandy had said, and as I say, happy to answer any questions. We are moving forward with implementing all the recommendations that are there. We are in a difficult position as the service manager has now moved on, so I'm working with the service now to try and move forward these. But as I say, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. MacLeod. And again, this has moved and has come a long way since we saw it first. So do other members, any members have any questions? No? Okay. Sorry, Ray. Yeah, Ray McKenzie.
Thanks, Chair. Just what is the establishment of the library section now? I know it was down by a third. at the last time I was aware. I think there was 14 employees. I don't know what the situation is now. And of course, we lost the manager since then.
I mean, it's from the it's an education issue, but I'll ask Mr. MacLeod to answer that question. Mr. MacLeod? Are you able
Thank
to
you,
provide?
thank you. Thank you, Chair. Well, off the top of my head, I can't, and I'll take a wee while just to pull that together to get the current situation, but I'll get that circulated to members in the next couple of days.
Yeah, it's active for the Education Committee, but if you could circulate, let Mr. Mackenzie know and the committee know it with when you do get the information together. We'd appreciate that, Mr. MacLeod. Mr. Finnegan, your hand again. Is it?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just coming now. It's just to give the committee an update and yourself an update on the progress that we're making. We've had a MAUG, Libraries MAUG, and last Monday, myself, Neil MacLeod and Councillor Francis Murray met with the staff, and we went around the building, and we're now progressing ideas that have come from that, and we're pushing, trying to look at how we can review things. Obviously, we're up against it because the budget's coming up, the budget settings are coming up, but we're working as quick as we can to sort of sort all the issues out, as many as possible anyway.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think the Chief Internal Auditor is happy with the progress to date as well. He's nodding his head there, so thank you for that. Okay, do members agree to note the report? Noted, thank you. We're now moving on to item 10 on the agenda. Again, a report on housing benefits by the Chief Internal Auditor. This notice for reporting and provides an update on recommendations made following a housing benefits and council tax reduction report. This follow-up review was undertaken in accordance with the operational annual internal audit plan for 2021-22. All recommendations have been fully implemented, and I would like to commend officers for their work. Now, this is first class. This is what we always try to achieve when we get reports coming before us. And I would like to really convey and commend the officers who have brought this to all Greens. It's fantastic to see. Mr. Gomez, I don't think you've got much more to add. And I'd like to, Jennifer MacLeod, I think you're online. I'd like to thank you and the team for your work in this as well. But Mr. Gomez, I'm not sure there's much we can add to this, but I'll let you have a comment.
Yes, thanks, Chair. There's nothing much to add. I mean, as you can see, there were two housekeeping recommendations, both been fully implemented. So it's good work by the department.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Members agree to note the report. Item 11, Go-Till Development, again a report by the Chief Internal Auditor, and it's for noting and provides an update on the recommendations made in the Capital Contract, Project Management and Service Provision of the Go-Till Care Development Report, which was issued on 23rd November 2021. This follow-up review was undertaken in accordance with the Operational Annual Internal Audit Plan for 21-22. The follow-up confirmed that 12 out of the 17 recommendations have been fully implemented, and management have confirmed that the remaining recommendations are ongoing. I'll ask Mr. Gomez to speak to the report, and I see Mr. McKinnon is present and he'll answer any questions. So Mr. Gomez, first of all.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, the original audit was completed in November of 2021. Out of the 17 recommendations made, 12 have now been fully implemented. So of the remaining recommendations that are outstanding, there are a number of which can only be implemented once the completion of the project has been finalised, as they relate to closing down elements and lessons learned elements. So happy with the progress that's been made so far.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Like you said, the other follow-ups, they've got to wait for the completion of the project. But Mr. McKinnon, I'll just ask you to come in and just give a brief overview, if you may, please. Thank you.
Nothing really to add to what I mentioned at PNR yesterday, and it's good that we've had such a positive outcome from this follow-up report from Sandy and his team. There are a number of issues which cannot be fully implemented until the project is complete, as Sandy points out, and we look forward to continuing to work with him and his team taking that forward.
Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. Members, Gordon Murray.
Thanks, Chair. It's just basically on the staffing, which is a bit worrying, but the cost of agency staff to be considered and included as a potential scenario, and the progress to date is 600,000 double running costs factored into the IJB. I mean, that can't be sustainable. So have we had any progress on looking at the terms and conditions of the care workforce and attracting more people into the sector?
That would be possibly one for social work, I think. I don't know, have we got any social work colleagues online?
Chair, I can.
Sorry, Chief Executive, you know.
You're correct, Chair. It is with Social Work and Social Care Board, and there was a full report to that board at its last meeting. I mean, everything within the strategy has been done. I think that there are a few outstanding matters to be taken forward, but certainly the progress to date was good. But the issue is national, I'm afraid. We cannot unilaterally change terms and conditions to the extent that might be desirable. But certainly the work which the Corla asked for has been done and reported to Social Work and Social Care Board.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Thank you. Okay, with that, do members agree to note the report? Councillor McLean.
It's just it's a follow on really from what the Chief Executive is saying. As he says, what he's actually said is, but there is still a problem of staffing, and if he agrees with me on that one, that will that then, if that's the case, one of the elements there that partially implemented there is confirmation is required from the department as to whether the facility can fully open in what Mr. McKinnon said in 2 weeks' time. Yesterday, I think he mentioned 2 weeks' time, so that's within 14 days, you know. So I'm taking his word on that, you know, that he's going to ensure us that that's the case without any delays whatsoever. But anyway, that's Mr. McKinnon's. I'm sure he has no sleepless nights over that. But the fact is that we can almost turn that to a green rather than an amber. It's because of staffing. I know there is a problem, and as Mr. Burr says, it's national. Will that impact Mr. McKinnon's date of 2 weeks' time?
I think it's 13 days, 14 days yesterday, because it's 13 days today. Chief Executive, I'll ask.
I can't answer the detail of that. Obviously, that would have to come from the service, but I'm not aware of any. I'm not aware of any issues impeding that timetable. Is all I can say.
Okay. Councillor Donald McSween online.
Madam Mayor, I'm not a member of your committee. I have a question in regards to this, but I think it's of a nature that the discussion would end up having to go into private, and I think you'll be going into private very soon anyway. So if you would indulge me, I would like to ask a question.
Yeah, could I, without going into your question, Councillor McSween, is it a service committee question or is it an audit committee question? Without divulging what your question is, do you think it's going?
I think it's an audit question.
Okay, when we go into private, we'll take it back in then towards the end of the meeting then. Okay.
Thank you.
Members, any other members? No. Okay, do we agree to note this report then? Agreed. Thank you. We move on now to item 12, early learning and childcare. Again, a report by the Chief Internal Auditor as for noting and provides an update on the recommendations made on the insurance report, which was issued on 20th July 2022. This follow-up review was undertaken in accordance with the operational annual internal audit plan for 2021-22. The follow-up confirmed that 11 out of the 17 recommendations have been fully implemented, and management have confirmed that the remaining recommendations are ongoing. Mr. Sandy Gomez will speak to the report and answer any questions. Mr. Gomez.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, this report was just completed and the final report issued in July last year. So a new manager had been in place, so it was a lot of work for them to implement. So of the 17 recommendations that were made, 11 implemented so far, which shows, you know, a real improvement in trying to work quickly to implement these changes. Of the remaining recommendations that are outstanding, a lot of them relate to training plans and things that take a bit more time. So we are aware that good progress has been made on these. Happy to take any questions.
Again, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Do members have any questions? No. Agreed to note this report. Agreed. Thank you. Items 13, 14 and 15 will be taken in private at the end of the meeting. We will now move to reports outstanding at item 16, and the reports outstanding are for noting. Remember, need to note the, yeah. Nothing really is for no. Thank you. Okay. Okay, we'll now conclude the meeting and go into private to consider items 13, 14 and 15. And as I said at the outset, we will take item 15 first of the three items because we've got the two officers present. The relevant officers and members of the committee should remain, and I will ask all other participants to please leave the meeting now. I would also ask members if we could bring, well, I've asked for member 15 to be brought forward. Before we do, maybe Councillor McSween, do you want to come back on your question when we go into private? First of all, just to get that out of the way, but we'll wait till we make sure we're in private first of all.